million votes in that year's general election. Well, that is also in addition to reducing its members of parliament from 137 plus 1 to now a little over 85. The NPP has been going through a very difficult time, and people have been talking about how the party can reorganize its base, bring unity to it, and ensure that it's able to have a resounding victory in 2028. And so the party's National Council thought it wise to decide that perhaps an early Congress for a presidential candidate would help us reorganize its base, among other reasons that it has given. Already, as we speak, the party just a few hours ago issued a statement on the roadmap to this presidential conference that is expected to take place in January 2026. And we'll be going through that. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Agenda. My name is Beatrice, and tonight we want to go into this decision by the New Patriotic Party to set its presidential conference or congress on the 31st of January 2026, and whether or not this is really a masterstroke or perhaps something that would deepen the cracks within the party further. I do have on the panel with me Professor Kobi Mensah. He's political and communications marketing strategist. Good evening to you, Prof. Thank you for joining us on Agenda.
Thanks for having me.
I also have on my right hand Mohammed Tofik Adamu. He is political communications lecturer at the Department of Communication Studies, the UPSA. He's also an executive member of the communications team, Ghana Academic Professional Forum. Good evening to you as well. Sir, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be joined via video call by Dr. Arthur Kennedy. He's a member of the New Patriotic Party to give us his perspective as well as a member of the opposition party. Remember that we're streaming live on 3FM 92.7. Send us your comments and we'll read them back to you. I want to start with you, Professor Kobi Mensah. This decision by the party to say that we're going to have the election for our presidential candidate on the 31st of January 2026 didn't just come from the National Council. Apparently, the committees that were set up to look into the, people call it embarrassing defeat of the NPP in last year's general election, recommended that apparently the members of the party are asking for an early Congress for varied reasons. Let me just get your thoughts on whether or not you agree with some of the reasons that have come up. And of course, we'll be going into it in the course of the conversation.
Okay. Beatrice, thanks for having me. And let me first of all commend Tufik. He looks great. I mean, you know, he's looking fantastic. I think that that's very good to see.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you. And yes, Beatrice, this is not the first time, you know, the MPP especially had actually had an early kind of, selection of a flag bearer.
Remember, the constitution of the party allows it to.
No, of course it does. I mean, but the point is that the committee that actually was appointed to research or to look into the disastrous defeat, I suppose, highlighted quite a number of issues. One of them, which I remember clearly, was the idea that people were apathetic, you know, to the political process.
You mean Professor Eronque's committee's report?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And they had suggested a number of, measures to take, including reforming, some key, institutional frameworks within the NPP. So I'm quite surprised that they never worked with any of those recommendations, but the early, selection of the flag bearer, I think it's perhaps it sent a certain signal. I mean, I had, spent time on NPP's constitution, not only now, but, almost about how many years? Almost about since 2009, because that was, part of my thesis. And it is clear that the party has certain structures that they're supposed to obey. And if you look at, one of the key...
And if you could actually be wrapping up on your preliminary thoughts, so I can... I realize that Dr. Arthur Kennedy has joined us, so I'll be coming to him just when you land before I come to Tofik.
Okay. So I will make a reference to the party's constitution. A very, let me just have a look. objective, the aims and objectives. 3, to win political power through democratic means in order to pursue the party's agenda. So if you talk about to win political power through democratic means, that means that from internal party organization, right from that word go, you want to ensure that certain democratic principles are adhered to. And it is surprising that they couldn't actually stick to their own principle, but just to, win political power, they just want to elect a flag bearer.
So you do not think you do not think that the decision to set the presidential primary, as it were, in January 2026 is democratic enough per the party's own constitution?
If you look at what we mean by democracy, it's not only constitutional. It's also talk about deliberative democracy.
Let me come
that
to
is quality of the engagement. So when people have reservations, but you still push the agenda of electing a flag bearer, I think it's somehow suspicious.
It's suspicious. I'm coming to you, Dr. Arthur Kennedy. You're a member of the opposition New Patriotic Party, and I was saying earlier that the committees that presented the report to the National Council, one of the things we understand they said was that, per their own information, members of the MPP wanted an early primary, as in the selection of a presidential candidate. Are you one of those members?
Good evening to your viewers. I am not. And it will seem, if they said that, I am sure that they are good men and women, their hearts are in the right place, but their brains are in the wrong place. I think they were consulting the same people they were talking to who were telling them we're going to win in a landslide. I think this is a very bad decision, doesn't serve the party well. And like the speaker said, it's anti-democratic because for general principles as well as even the party's own principles, that it generally does not make sense to select your flag bearer that early in an election cycle when the government that came in would have spent barely a year in office. The issues that will be salient in the next election have not developed yet. And historically, most parties don't do that. If you think about it, if the Republicans had chosen Trump or they had chosen a candidate in 2022 for 2024, it would not have been Trump because he was very unpopular. But as the election cycle developed, he gained traction because his message seemed to resonate with the issues. After all, we don't vote in a vacuum. In 1860, Lincoln wasn't very popular when the cycle started. By the time it came around, slavery was coming to the fore and it was getting stronger. Jimmy Carter wouldn't have been the candidate if they voted in 1973. By 76, he was a strong candidate. And not only that, the MPP's own history. You look at the Hyman Committee in 2009 and the Safumafu Committee in 2020 have all strongly suggested that we broaden the franchise so more people can vote. And it actually in 2010 or so, I was in the room when Nana Addo and Alan Martin and all those people committed to ask the young ones that one man, one vote was coming during the next election, and a decade later, it hasn't come. It will seem as if there are some people who are afraid of everybody voting. So when I see all those people going through contorted arguments about how we should have former chairman and this boy like Kwabena Japan, I will ask him, why are we afraid of letting everybody vote?
But Doc, sorry to interrupt you. We've already heard Kwabena Japan, for instance, saying that he's one of those asking for a lot more people to be allowed to vote, including former executives from as far back as 1992. And it is the reason the party has also decided to have that conference on the 19th of July this year, for instance.
It's not the reason. If he was pushing, he should push for everybody to vote. Why is it that we can go through all the contortions of adding people from 92 and 94 and why don't we just let everybody who is a party member vote? That is democracy. The people you want to vote for you in the general election, I say let them vote now. And of course, in the general election, when people are going to vote, we don't ask them for money. We don't ask whether they can pay dues. Let's open it. Let's democratize it like the Americans do. As soon as you declare support for a political party, you are entitled to vote in its primary.
Doc, let me get again this clarity before I come to Mr. Adamu. You're saying that the party should do away with the electoral college?
Yes, everybody who is a party member or declares support for the party should be entitled to vote, just like they will be entitled to vote and we canvass their votes in general elections.
But you just referred to the elections in the U.S., and the U.S. has electoral college. So is that not a contradictory argument you're making, Doc?
No, I'm talking about party members who vote. It is the counting of the votes that involves an electoral college, and I can take you through how the electoral college works. But I'm talking about general party members taking part in the choice of their candidates, the same people whom we would canvass and ask to come and vote for us in general elections. That's what I'm talking about.
And I'll come back to you, Doc. I want to get the view of Mohammed Tawfiq Adamu. And we've heard both Doc and Prof talk about the need to ensure there's democracy in this system. And if you look at the party's constitution, Article 5.2a says, the party shall be based on constituency, regional, external, and national organizations. Would you share the same view with them that they are jumping the gun?
Well, and I don't think that the NPP is jumping the gun for very obvious reasons. And before I even respond to that, I would want to put on record that the Michael Quay report has not been made public, so I don't know where we are getting our sources from.
Well, I'm even aware that the minority, per an interview one of the members granted, they haven't read the report yet, but at least there's one aspect that has come up, which is that there was apathy towards the MPP in the elections.
Well, I think you don't need a rocket scientist to tell you that there was apathy during the elections. Quite a number of NPP supporters did not come out to vote. So the issue of apathy is well established. But what I do know is that, you know, an early Congress, you know, has very important significance for a party that is in opposition.
Tell us.
And you can look, it has both strategic, symbolic, and practical significance. So, for example, an election allows the flag bearer the opportunity or ample time to prepare himself, or whoever wins to prepare himself, and then campaign vigorously for national acceptance. And it also allows the candidate or the party to organize its base and be able to eliminate any internal rivalry that may come. And it also has the opportunity for the candidate or the party to deal with problems of factionalism and division within the party. So there are a lot of advantages that comes with early elections, and I think that is what the NPP is trying to tap into, and then maximize the opportunity and make it very easy for them to win the elections.
Prof, do you agree with that?
Well, I disagree. I think that listening to the reasoning of the NPP, which their reasoning is contrary to what, you know, my big brother, Dr. Kennedy, is actually saying. These are, you know, core architects of the MPP party. A lot of them are against that reasoning. It's a very teleological one. I am surprised that a party that actually subscribes to due process, due diligence, they talk about duty of care, would rather reason that it is because early elections or selection of a candidate will win them power, and so they have to do that. Really? What happens to democratic processes? What happens to the due process that MPP claims to be, you know, the core of that, at the core of that in this country? And I always, you know, marvel with this particular reasoning, because you see, in those days, and I can remember, I mean, when in 1992, when we were following as kids, Eduboahin and co, you wouldn't even find such a reasoning from an MPP party. You know, so I sometimes wonder whether the kinds of leadership that we have has actually deteriorated. And I have actually made that point. I think before the election, I said that this leadership of the NPP is the most weakest. It's the weakest you have ever had, you know, because one of the things that Justin Kodi, I heard them, not particularly him, but I heard the leadership of the NPP say is that when they elect a flag bearer, they would have a stronger hold of the party. They could control the party. What about the chairman? What about the general secretary? I don't think that you can say the same for NDC, because you dare not actually sidestep a certain processes with Fifi Kwete, with General General Sekretary in authority. You can't say that they wouldn't have. So for you to say that it is only when wait, just a minute.
Let him land. You come in, and then I'll go to
Dr. For you
Dr.
to say that it is
Kennedy.
only when you have a presidential candidate that you can have an orderliness in this party, tells you that the leadership is weak. And I'm surprised that they can actually have such.
I bet to differ, because you see, we have to be very careful not to create the impression that the NPP is trying to impose candidates on the party.
That's exactly what they're doing.
That's not what they're trying to do, with the greatest respect. You know, it's a process, it's a democratic process, a very democratic process that you are making mention of. It's the process that the party is going to go through. You know, the party has its own structures, and they are going to go through the same process. They are not going to impose someone on anyone.
That you're going to elect police station executives.
And in any case, when you go back to history, I think if there is any political party in this country that has imposed, you know, candidates, you know, on party, I mean, it's the NDC, because we saw what happened.
Is this an NDC NPP thing, or it's about really what the NPP is doing, and whether or not that is what Ghanaians are looking for?
So I am making reference to history, political history, right? Because if there's any political party in this country that has imposed candidate on people, I think it's the NDC, because
which candidate did they impose?
The late Professor Ivan Satamels by the late President Rawlings.
By which data are you referring to that?
The election that brought Mills to contest the election the first time. It was a Widiba Swedro declaration. We call it Swedro declaration, where, you know, the leader of the party then, former President Rawlings declared. No, it wasn't an endorsement.
I don't think this is about,
because there was no other candidate that contested against. You know,
I'm aware
Mills,
that before Professor Mills,
nobody could do that, because the leader of the party, Rawlings,
I'm aware that before Professor Mills was elected, there was a candidate in the central region, I'm told a lecturer, that they were considering, and that person refused to do it. Yes, but again, I want us to establish the fact that this is not about what MPP did and what NDC did. We're just looking at...
We're trying to put the argument in its right perspective because of some examples that were given. And I'm trying to say that that is not entirely the case, because if there is any example to make reference to, then it should be the NDC.
So the import of that point is what exactly?
So the point I'm trying to make is that the NPP is working within the scope of its constitution, right? The NPP is not trying to impose a candidate, you know, on them.
So let me ask you this question before I come to you for clarity, Prof, and then I'll come to you, Dr. Arthur Kennedy. The other argument is that the constituency executives and the other grassroots executives of the party, their mandates, they have a 4-year mandate. Sure. Their mandate expires in March. That those who have theirs, I think the regional will expire in May, and then there's another group of leadership that expires in July. So what is the rush in doing this in January ahead of these expirations? So these individuals are even supposed to be taking part in that presidential congress.
Okay, so the National Executive Council of the party has within its own power to make these decisions, and so it is within the wisdom of the National Executive Party, you know, of the party, you know, executive council of the party, to go for early election.
And I
haven't had the opportunity to find out the rationale behind it. But I can tell
some of them to us.
Yes. I can tell you that, I mean, whenever there's an early election, I mean, early Congress, there are reasons that lead to that. And part of the reasons are the ones that I read out to you, is to organize or reorganize or restructure the party. Because if you look over the period of time, you could see that there are a lot of tension within the NPP. I mean, who becomes the flag bearer, etc., etc.
And you believe this is the way to deal with it?
And it is leading to lots and lots of factions. I mean, you can look at the last elections that happened, and a lot of utterances made by certain, leadership, certain personalities within the party, according to the reports that we had, contributed to the party's, failure in the elections. So I think it's in the wisdom of the party, in order to curtail or to curb these development, there's the need for an early Congress so that there will be a leader who would who will unify the party and then allow the party.
And I realize that Dr. Kennedy is reacting to it. I will come to you very shortly, but I want to get that quick reaction from you and with this question, because you still have a problem with the January 31, 2026 Congress. And I was saying that the party's constitution allows the MPP to do that. If you look at Article 12, and you said earlier that you've gone through the constitution, so I'm sure you're aware of this, that election of the party's presidential candidate shall be held not later than 24 months from the date of the national election. The date and venue for the election shall be decided by the National Council, an argument that Tofik was making. Yes, there's a caveat there that when the party is in power, it can be done within 11 months. But now it is in opposition. So 24 months, a little over 24 months, how huge of a difference is it?
But not beside a prescribed, processes. Look, legitimacy of a process is in structures and in procedures, not in the bosom of a certain crop of people.
But I don't think
you can imagine that. You can imagine that.
I don't think the party is saying that something is wrong. I don't think the party.
We're talking about democratic processes. All right, the legitimacy of it. I don't think that you would be happy to hear Electoral Commission say, "Oh, this year." The electoral budget is too big. We don't have the money, so let's go with the register of the last elections. Would you be happy with that? The Constitution prescribes you to identify those who have turned 18 and others who are 18 and above, get them registered, get them check that their names are in the register, and then finally let them vote.
I'm happy, Prof.
No, wait.
I'm happy, Prof. You're making mention to the Constitution.
But that's exactly what you guys...
I also want you to know that it is the same Constitution of the party that allows for the National Executive Council to take that decision. You've not subverted anything.
You have subverted the Constitution.
Gentlemen, let me go to Dr.
within the confines of the law.
I'll come back to you. Let me go to Dr. Arthur Kennedy. And Doc, I know you are listening in keenly, but I want to get your thought also, in addition to your reaction to what the two gentlemen in studio here have already said. Somebody has expressed this opinion that, for instance, the Amendment Committee, and that's what I referred to earlier in the introduction, reported to the National Council that all the proposals they received from party members on presidential primaries were calling on the party to conduct early presidential primaries to elect a flag bearer, considering, quote-unquote, the extraordinary situation the party finds itself. The committee submitted that electing a flag bearer now makes him potentially the next president of Ghana in the eyes of the international community, political opponents, the business community, civil society, and the generality of Ghanaians. I realize Prof is laughing about what I'm reading, but Doc, what's your comment on it?
Hogwash. In actual fact, in addition to constitutions, there are also conventions. 13.1 does give the National Council the right to set dates for Congresses, but it also says that in 10.2 that the National Congress shall be the highest decision-making body. So that one is there. The decision that they made can be varied, but let's talk about first principles. When I talk about their traditions, dating all the way back from the time of the Rocha, generally, after a presidential election, the party executives need to go renew their mandate. And one of the gentlemen spoke about that all these party executives who are there now, their mandates are expiring in the next 12 months. If your mandate is expiring, the first thing to do is to renew that mandate. I remember Onyini Nto and McMahon had a very interesting take after there was a defeat with Nanado. McMahon said, we led the party and our candidate lost, so we failed the party. I won't even seek a new mandate. Oyeninto said we need continuity, so I will seek a mandate. And he went and he lost. But I'm just saying that even assuming the best intentions of the ladies and gentlemen, they should first go and renew their mandate. It will seem as if they are doing a sleight of hand to, in effect, elect a flag bearer who will turn around and bless them before they go seek their mandate. That is anti-democratic. And not only that, you are referring to the report of the Okoye Committee. It's in the bosom of a few people who come and whisper parts of it to us. All of us go to see the report so we make up our minds. And not only that, it comes fundamentally to the question of democracy, that one, they ought to renew their mandate. The second thing is that all the way from 2008, the party has been on record as supporting one man, one vote. I'm just asking, why is it that we can't do that now? This idea of in the eyes of the international community and all those, we heard similar arguments on behalf of Dr. Baumia about the incumbency and breaking the aid, and went and collected the worst defeat in our history. We should go back to the basic principles of the MPP. Indeed, we used to be the party of rules and openness and due process. And that is not what is happening here. I think that it is very tempting to conclude that there are people who fear the voters and think that unless we vote very quickly, their popularity will wane. Ask them, if you are afraid that if we go beyond 2026, your popularity will wane, then what will your popularity be like in 2028? Let us do the right things, because this idea that the party delegates are calling for early election of flag bearer and only the flag bearer can lead the party does not accord with our history and with our traditions. We need to do the right thing.
There are those who feel that, yes, I've heard Prof. Kobi Mensah say that he feels what's happening is indicative of weak leadership because that's not the kind of MPP that the country has had over the period. But those who also think that the MPP currently needs a strong leader and a strong opposition voice against the current government. What do you make of that argument?
That argument does not hold water, because that is precisely why the mandate of the current leaders are about to expire. The chairman is sick. His family is begging for a leave of absence. That is precisely why we should go back to the party membership at the grassroots so that they give us new leadership who hopefully will be strong and do what is it that they need to do. The idea that we must cut corners to pick a leader when we don't even know what the issues of the next general election are going to be would be a recipe for disaster. I've cited examples about such things being done elsewhere when you take your time. Canada, for example, just elected a prime minister that most people didn't know until barely 4 months to the election. How did they do that? They figured out that their economy was key. The opposition party had led polling for about 3 years, but they said our crisis is economic, looking at the US and other things. They picked Mr. Carney, who had been governor of Bank of Canada and Bank of England. And he swept to victory because he was the leader Canada needed at that time. And they waited. If they had picked one 3 years earlier, it would never have been Mr. Carney. I don't see why there is a rush to do this.
You don't see why there's a rush to do this. You want to come in?
Yes. First of all, I want to establish the fact that the NPP finds itself in a very difficult, situation.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, the NPP is without a doubt in an extraordinary time, and during extraordinary times, you need extraordinary solutions to deal with the problems. And so, if you look at the structure of the party itself, I can agree with Prof and Doc that the party structure is very weak, and
What do you mean the party structure? As in, it's spelled out in the Constitution?
No. I mean
the current leadership.
The current
you
leadership.
Agree with the fact that?
I agree, absolutely. And I think some 2-3 days ago, we we held a press conference, the group, Ghana Academic Professionals Forum, and we scored the current leadership 42% over 100. Woefully, I mean, it's a fail. If I'm a lecturer, so I'm a lecturer, so I know if anyone gets, you know, anything below 50, it's a fail.
They're nearing F.
Yeah,
they have to rewrite.
Yeah, they have to rewrite. They have to resit the exams. So it's a fact that the party leadership, you know, is weak. And so if the party leadership is weak, then there's the need to have solution to that.
I seem to get contradictory remarks from you. You're agreeing in one breath, you're agreeing that the party's leadership is weak. Yeah. In another breath, you're saying that the party is in a difficult situation. What calls for extraordinary measures?
Sure.
These measures ought to be called for by the leadership that you're describing weak. Okay. So which point should we take?
So the same leadership, the party leadership itself is weak, as I said. So people from the grassroots or people or stakeholders in the party are calling for reforms within the party to strengthen the party leadership, etc., etc. And so that's why they are calling for early Congress.
But
so that
you do that first before you select.
No, because of the timing. You know, because of the timing, the Constitution would not allow for, you know, to elect new leadership. I mean, executive leadership for the party. But the Constitution allows for you to go for early Congress that allows you to pick a presidential candidate for it, and that's where we are now.
So I want
and so because of the extraordinary time that we find ourselves, I think it's within you know the solution chamber for the NPP to look for such solutions, get a leader, a formidable leader that would be able to market the leader, be able to also organize the party, be able to also whip the sentiment of its grassroots, and also be able to market the leader itself in the elections that is just in front of us in 2028. And
earlier I was referring to a statement that was issued by the party just a couple of hours before we came on air, and I want to read that to you. And it is titled, "New Patriotic Party to invite all presidential hopefuls. Talks disciplinary action against Bono Regional Chairman and Mr. Kwame Bafo alias Abronye." And it's a very quick statement, so I read that to you. It says the National Steering Committee of the New Patriotic Party, NPP, at its meeting on Tuesday, June 24, 2025, resolved as follows: to invite all personalities who have so far publicly declared their intention to contest in the forthcoming NPP presidential primary to a joint meeting with the steering committee and the National Council of Elders. The meeting, which is expected to discuss matters of mutual interest, is scheduled to take place on Thursday, July 3, 2025. Refers the Bono Regional Chairman, Mr. Kwame Bafo alias Abronye, to the party's National Disciplinary Committee for breaching directives of the National Council, cautioning him to refrain from making unguarded public comments, direct the immediate cessation of all caucuses or associations of present and former party executives or government appointees holding meetings with presidential aspirants in breach of party regulations. The party wishes to once again remind members of their constitutional obligations to protect party unity, to abide by and publicly support the party's decisions, and to refrain from engaging in acts that threaten party cohesion. Having read this statement, and I want to get that quick thought from you before I come back to you, Doc, don't you think that this should be the primary focus of the party instead of the election that it is talking about in January?
Oh. I mean, electing a presidential kind of leader of the party is far important. As for disciplinary issues,
dealing with the cracks in the party?
No, these are not cracks. We have to be very careful with our choice of words. These are not cracks. These are disciplinary issues, and it happens everywhere. Okay, even in our homes, there are disciplinary issues, and then you need to take action. So I think the action that the party is taking on Abronye, I mean, it's a call in the right direction. So let us not divert, the argument, the issue. The issue is on electing a flag bearer for the party. It is not about disciplinary issues. I mean, a lot of the parties have gone through this process before, as far as disciplinary issues are concerned, with its political party. So the issues are different. We are looking at electing a flag bearer, and we think that going for early Congress is in the best interest of the party. And I want to quickly respond to Doc when he spoke about expanding the electoral college.
He said he should actually clear it. We don't need the electoral college.
Yes, I mean expanding voter membership, allowing people to vote. I think it's a process, because as a party, before you can open, your doors widely, there are structures you need to put in place. One has to do with biometric registration of your membership of the party, because there are also, criteria for who votes, in every party, including the one in the United States of America, Doc is making mention of, and all advanced democracies. So there's the need for the party to have, a robust, biometric data in place, so that they can open, the voter membership for all members of the party to do that. But as it stands right now, the reality is that the party doesn't have that in place. And so it becomes a bit suicidal for the party to open, its doors for people to vote. But I think the party is working towards it, and they are very close to getting that biometric, database in place. And when that is in place, I believe that the NPP as a political party believes in democracy, believes in transparency, etc., would allow the party, or will allow members to come in and then, cast their votes.
I hope Doc is still on the line with us. Doc, I'm wondering what your thoughts are regarding what Mr. Taufik Adamu is just saying, and even your thoughts on the statement I read from the MPP that came in just some few hours ago.
Let me begin with Mr. Taufik. We are talking not about a weak leader, but weak leadership. The two are different. We are not an authoritarian party which needs a big man leader to solve all our problems. Sometimes our leaders are in the regions or in some key constituencies. So we can't just say, let all the weak leaders continue. We just need one big, strong leader. No one person can lead a party like the MPP to victory. We need strong leaders at the polling station level, at constituency level, at regional and at national level. So when we talk about leader, we're not talking about a single leader. We're talking about leadership as a collectivity. We have all agreed that the leadership currently is weak. How do you convert weak leaders to strong leaders? You vote them out and you pick strong leaders. That is a collectivity, and it should go all the way to the presidential candidate. Maybe somebody might say that our last presidential candidate was weak. That is why we lost. But that is an argument to be made to the voters. So I say, let the party decide. Let's not fear the voters. As for the point that he made about how, we need to put certain structures in place before we open our doors, the people are not outside that we are trying to let in. They are already in the party. They are the people who rely on to vote. When we went to the polls, weren't those the people who were asking to vote? Just in case we missed it, 20 to 25% of John Mahama voters were MPP members who left home and went and voted for John Mahama. And a lot of them stayed at home. We need to engage them. We need not to fear them.
Doc, where is this data of 20 to 25% coming from?
Where did he get that data
from Musa Dankwa. Yeah. And you can call him and ask him. Absolutely. I have engaged him. You can ask him. 20 to 25% of John Mahama's voters were MPP members. And you can call him and ask him. By the way, talking about the biometric data that he's talking about, we have that already. It is with the EC. The way the Americans do it is that when you register, you indicate support or affiliation with a political party. And when you do that, you are entitled to vote in their primary. The same way you are entitled to vote in a general election. The criteria for voting in your party's primary is being qualified to vote in the general election. We should not be begging people to vote for us in general elections and be afraid of letting them vote in primary so we can control the primary.
It looks like Ms. Adamu wants to interject.
Doc, with the greatest respect, I think sometimes, you know, some of the examples Doc gives does not match the context of our conversation. Because Doc always makes reference to the American system. But if the American system...
I thought Ghana has always compared itself with the US, even with both parties.
In respect to the issue that we are talking about, the biometric data we are talking about, the American system allows, the Electoral Commission in America allows people, whilst registering, to also indicate their party of affiliation. Our Electoral Commission does not allow that.
No, but that does not mean that you cannot achieve it. You see, that's the wrong way of looking at it. Let me tell you something. So assuming that you have 10 people, from what Doc was saying, all right, that the people are not outside, they are already inside. So assuming that you have 10 people in an area that decide, that have actually demonstrated they are MPP people, can't you have their electoral ID numbers and then retrieve their biometric from the EC?
I don't understand.
It's the same. It is the same.
I don't understand.
You don't necessarily have to indicate party of affiliation.
What do you mean by they have demonstrated?
No, I'm saying that.
Let me come, Prof.
What Doc was saying. What Doc was saying. Wait.
I think you interjected, Doctor.
You are rather wrong.
Dr. Kennedy. So can he make? Okay, so if you can make your point, then we'll let him land.
So what I'm trying to say is that I don't know what Prof means by, you know, people demonstrating that they are MPP people. If you look at the MPP constitution, it is not just by mere proclamation Prof,
just a second.
That I'm an MPP person, so automatically no. But there are you need to be a party person of a very good standing.
Okay,
very good standing includes paying your dues. That's one of it.
But you can still find out.
No, but how do you do that? I'm saying that we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the structure in place to do that.
Doc,
and the party is working towards that direction.
Dr. Kennedy, if you could kindly land on your thoughts. Mr. Adamu is disagreeing with you. He feels that you're comparing apples with oranges. Is that the case?
No.
Pick the running mate who didn't even have a party card. So let's put that aside. I am just saying that if, for example, we agreed, and I'm not saying that this should just even apply.
Please let him land on his thoughts. Please let him land on his thoughts so we can make progress.
No, I think we need to think.
Yes, but I think we need to also make progress, respectively.
If Doc says that you pick a running mate who doesn't have, you know, I think you should have called it because this is a running mate. I mean, how can you say that?
I think
you don't have any evidence.
But that was a fact.
You will have the opportunity to respond to that. So please,
let me continue.
You have the opportunity to respond to that. I think we need to make progress. Doc, if you can land so we can make progress with the conversation.
If they leave me, I will land. I'm just saying that if, for example, both MPP and NDC decided that we want to democratize and demonetize our politics, we can say, for example, beginning from, say, 1st to 30th August, every voter who is registered in Ghana can go and indicate to the Electoral Commission which party they support, affiliate
I agree with this one.
Please.
And at the end of that month, we will have this data we're talking about. Then those people will be entitled to vote in the primaries. Why is it that voting in your party's primary requires a higher standard than voting in the general election? The people who are qualified to vote in the general election should be qualified to vote in their party's primaries, unless we are afraid of them. So when we do that, it means that you have presidential primaries the same day for both MPP and NDC. Those who indicated sympathy with NDC will be voting for their presidential candidate. MPP people will be voting for their presidential candidate. When we come to parliamentary, we do the same thing. It is not that hard to do, and it doesn't cost anything if we are committed to doing that.
All right. I want to come to Professor Kobe Mensah, but before that, I want to read some of your comments back to you. And Nana Yao Yok says, what they are preventing is still happening. The words they use on each other that took them to opposition, and the videos will be there after their top-bottom approach and will be used against them in 2028 elections. There is Kweku Ajiman who says the American system of electoral college is not the best. So the Americans need to learn from Ghana. Oh, okay. One man, one vote. So just stop the comparison. So I guess that's directly to Dr. Arthur Kennedy. There's Awal Murph. He says, Doc is tickling himself. LOL, you mean 20 to 25% MPP voted for John Dramani Mahama is false. MPP always depended on floating voters. There's Jay Panthers. Where from this man with the green juju? Okay, so I think he's talking about Mr. Damu here. Foga Nukunu also says Mr. Damu doesn't even know what he was saying. I will go to those who brought us messages earlier. Kwame Jandu, I hope I got your name correctly, says, I thought people who wear suits were, okay, enlightened. He doesn't seem happy with Mr. Damu as well. And then I'll read again. It says, what has a Swedro declaration got to do with this? Okay, he's using the word, I'm sorry, I can't read that, being exhibited by this weak MPP leadership. Prof, just your thoughts and then we'll move on very briefly.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so you wanted to come in earlier, but I mean, before you do that though, let me ask you this question about what we know in terms of the data, that Ghanaians massively voted against the MPP in the 2024 general election, massively because of the economic issues that they thought the party was coming to deal with.
Sure.
And if you look at the party's own constitution, and I'll read it again, Articles 2, 8, and then 13 say, I'll read first the 2, 8, to ensure that the wealth of the country is not monopolized by a section or particular area of the country, but is fairly shared and enjoyed by all, in particular to bridge the present wide gap between the urban and rural communities and also improve conditions in depressed urban areas of the country. That's 2.8. If you go to 2.13, it says to manage the economy of the country with efficiency and prudence, guided by the consideration of the national interest.
They never did. Obviously, they never did. I mean, I have actually argued that since 2008, when former President Atta Mills of blessed memory actually brought in the young people in NDC, the NDC had changed image. In fact, they have swapped image, with MPP. Those days growing up, and that's where we have the men came in.
Yeah.
I remember President Kufuor clearly when he was questioned that he hadn't been successful in his enterprise. He said that, but that's not, he's not the only one who is going to govern. He has the ability to actually bring in quite a diverse people who can actually perform. And that's where we have the men came in. So in those days, you can literally, when we're young, you can literally stand on your feet and mention not less than 10 MPP people who were stellar. You can talk about J.H. Mensah, you can talk about Nado himself, you can talk about President Kufuor, you can talk about Selby. These were people who were leaders of the MP, and each of them could be a presidential candidate. You can imagine the way Kufuor could pull these people together, these egos. I mean, I remember when I was in secondary school, St. Augustine's College, and then you hear Sikalele man, Hakman Owusu coming to campus, and all of us have lined up to see him. These were heavyweights, all right? How many of the MPP leaders can you count on your fingertips right now as I speak? The party was reduced to 3 names: Nanado, Free SHS, and Baumia. Beyond that, you couldn't remember anybody. So clearly, since 2008 onwards, this party had become personality dominant as opposed to collective. And that's what Dr. Kennedy
So let me just get your thought very briefly. The reason
MPP has retrogressed.
the reason
you have to accept that.
The reason
Weak
I
leadership weak reasoning and weak solutions.
Prof, the reason I asked that question was that knowing that this is not hidden from the party itself, that a lot of Ghanaians were expecting economic progress, especially with your vice president who actually campaigned on the ticket of the MP of the economy for the party to be voted into power in 2016 and starting the government in 2017. They felt that this was the major reason you lost. So perhaps you should be presenting to Ghanaians what strong economic plans you have, either to make the country better, move it forward, or solidify what is currently being done.
Yeah. So with the management of the economy, I think the NPP has said, and even Dr. Bawumia himself, the then vice president and the running mate, they've counted some of the reasons why, you know, the economy wasn't in its best shape, and the NPP do admit that we had very difficult time, and there were reasons to that, and we had issues with the international.
Not difficult, that they were reckless.
We'll have to be wrapping up shortly, and I need to go back to Doc. So if you could kind
they
of
were reckless.
No, they were not reckless.
They have been reckless with the economy.
No, they were not reckless with the economy.
They've been deliberately reckless.
No, they've not been. I mean, they've not been. Prof is heckling me. I know why you're doing that.
Respectfully, please.
So there were issues that led to that. We all know about Russian-Ukraine war that accounted for.
But it was
dramatized.
It hasn't.
Prof, respectfully, please let him land, because I need to go to
there were international issues, you know, that also had effect.
But the argument
on the
is that
Ghanaian
there were
economy.
other countries of the world experienced the same COVID. So how come it hit Ghana?
But we had different economies. I mean, we had different economies.
So it means that you didn't have a good economy in the first place.
I would love it. I would love it if you will put this conversation in its right perspective. Look at NPP economy, NPP-led economy in its first term. I mean, from 2020 to the first term of Akufo-Addo, and NPP's economy in the second term of Akufo-Addo. I mean, vast difference. You could before COVID, the economy was doing fantastic.
So just a brief question, Prof, please. Just a brief question before I go to Dr. Kennedy. You're disagreeing with the fact that Ghanaians voted against the NPP because of the economy.
No, I agree with it.
So then what's the point you're making?
I accepted that. I told you that. Yes, there were issues with the economy, and even the then vice president and the leader of the party did admit that there were issues with the economy. And I'm telling you that it just didn't happen.
Okay.
There were things that led to that, and I'm giving you reasons. You know, some of the reasons that led to that. I'm telling you that if you compare NPP's first term, the economy in its first term, and the economy in its second term, when we had COVID, when we had, Russia-Ukraine war, you will see vast difference between that. So it would be wrong. It would be wrong to conclude that the NPP, recklessly managed Ghana's economy. I think that is unfortunate to make that statement.
Doc, I want to get your thoughts on really the kind of cards in terms of economic cards that the NPP should be putting on the table, even as it thinks of its presidential primary in January. And then I'll come back for your final thought and we'll wrap up.
The first thing is that they should stop thinking about a presidential candidate and start developing policies. So on the economy, for example, I think that it is very telling that President Mahama had a national economic summit or forum, and most of the speeches were read from Sinchi. Nobody who is serious would discuss Ghana's economy without discussing the diaspora, because the amount the diaspora sends home is more significant than direct foreign investment and from the Bretton Woods institutions. Secondly, President Mahama has started trying to boost the value of the cedi, and nobody is critiquing it. But the reason why it is important is that we are an export-oriented economy. We are raw materials. So when we boost the value of the cedi, it makes the raw materials we are exporting more expensive on the international market. So it actually ends up hurting our economy. That is why repeatedly in the past, whenever we've had problems, when J.H. Mensah and others were there, we devalue our cedi, because then it makes our exports more attractive. So to the larger point, I think that we need to be talking about policies and strengthening the party and morale instead of thinking of a big man candidate who can save all of us. And if I may use a moment to talk about the Electoral College.
And you have just about 45 seconds, Doc, I'm sorry, just to make that point, and I will take your final thought and come to the rest of the panel members.
Sure. The Electoral College occurs only when we are talking about the presidency and how we count it. But in the primary process, it's one man, one vote. Naturally, Canada has a similar primary process, even though it doesn't use an Electoral College. So I think we should look at opening the system so that people can participate and be enthusiastic about coming back to vote in the general election, because it is painful when your friend has gone to collect 20,000 to give your party's nomination to somebody and they are asking you to come and vote so he will be president.
Duchum, former education minister, declaring his intention. We've had Brian Champon as well. Of course, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. Which of these candidates do you think is viable ahead of 2028?
At this point, none of them, because without a sound, vibrant party, none of them will do well. And I think there will be new candidates too before we are all done. But the first thing should be to build the party.
Let me get your final thought. Thank you very much, Doc. In 30 seconds, please.
First of all, let me actually disabuse the idea that MPP's first term was. Look, it was shambolic. The economy started decaying in 2019. Don't forget, the early years of Nanado was okay because there was an IMF program that actually restricted them from misbehaving with the economy.
Prof, we need to wrap up. So if you
clearly, you know, the party has actually done badly throughout. Now, in terms of policy, the policy credibility of the MPP has also weakened because obviously you did DDEP. The shambolic implementation of the free SHS actually takes every, kind of belief that people had in MPP.
In 20 seconds, please. I think we need to wrap up now.
Okay, so
moving forward.
Moving forward, I can say that the MPP did very well with the economy in their first term, and even their second term until the outbreak of COVID-19 and the war in Russia and Ukraine.
All right,
that affected every aspect of our economy. But to also say that Ghana has a future with the NPP.
All right, we'll have to end it here. I'm so sorry. We'll have to end it here. Our time is up. Professor Kobe Mensah, political and communications marketing strategist. Thank you for joining us in studio. We've also had Mohammed Tawfiq Adamu, a political communications lecturer, Department of Communication Studies, UPSA, also executive member of the Ghana Academic Professional Forum. And of course, we've had Dr. Arthur Kennedy, who is a member of the opposition MPP. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on Agenda tonight. Join us again next week. My name is Beatrice. You have a good evening.